Jean Hart stood at the edge of the landing platform, staring up at the gleaming spires of Vortec Industries. Their curved, bone-white surfaces caught the harsh orange sunlight of Proxima Centauri b and flung it back into the sky in blinding arcs. The architecture was alien and imposing, organic in its contours, yet cruel in its scale, as though designed to make any visitor feel smaller the closer they approached. He adjusted the seams of his black exosuit, letting the plates settle against his frame. The suit's weight was reassuring, its clean lines and dark sheen meant to convey confidence, competence, and he hoped authority. 6 months in cryosleep and 2 weeks in planetary quarantine had brought him here to this moment. All he had to do was walk inside and not screw it up. The reception hall was alive with translucent walls that shimmered faintly like jellyfish membranes. Holoscreens pulsed with shifting symbols, his translator only half rendered, while the scent of something sharp and metallic hung in the air. Behind a curving desk made of polished crystal, a tall, four-limbed Proximan studied him with unblinking, iridescent eyes. She raised a slender hand and gestured toward a door that slid open soundlessly. "Director Pell will see you now." The office beyond was darker, hushed. Jim's boots sank slightly into a floor that looked like polished stone, but felt almost organic. At the far end of the chamber, behind a desk fashioned from what seemed to be fossilized bone, sat Director Pell. The alien's mottled green skin shimmered with moisture, and his 3 eyes blinked independently, one fixing on Jaime, while the others drifted as if appraising the air itself. 4 long arms rested on the desk, fingers tipped with blunt pads rather than nails. "Mr. Hart," the voice emerged through the translator with a metallic undertone, clipped and cold. "Your credentials are adequate. However, certain concerns must be addressed." Xion forced a confident nod, his pulse drumming in his ears. "Of course, sir. I'm prepared to answer any questions." Pell's left eye narrowed, while the others remained half-lidded. "Is it true that humans require regular periods of unconsciousness to function? Approximately 1/3 of your lifespan wasted in this sleep state?" Jaime cleared his throat. "That's accurate. But rest cycles are biologically necessary for almost every species, and you excrete waste multiple times daily through designated orifices." Heat rushed into Jaime's face. "That's a universal process. All carbon-based life, you consume deceased organic matter for sustenance," Pell cut in. "Barbaric." Jaime's jaw tightened. "With respect, Director, I came to discuss my engineering expertise, not human biology." Pell leaned forward, all 4 hands pressing onto the desk with sudden weight. "One final question. Human. Is it accurate that your kind forms emotional attachments to non-sentient creatures, even those belonging to entirely different species?" The memory of his childhood dog rose unbidden, a scrappy mutt that had followed him everywhere until its last painful breath. He swallowed hard. "Sometimes, yes. Companionship is important to us." Pell's middle eye flared wide. "Unacceptable. Vortec cannot risk employing a species that diverts resources to non-productive entities based on feelings." "That's absurd," Jaime said, anger seeping into his voice. "My values won't affect my performance. Your application is denied, Mr. Hart. Humans remain too primitive for our corporate culture." 2 towering guards stepped silently from hidden alcoves, their forms heavy with armor. Jaime's fists clenched, but he forced himself still. Picking a fight here would end badly for him, for his people. He exhaled through his nose, shoulders tight. "Fine," he muttered. "Your loss." The guards escorted him out, their shadows long and cold against the glowing walls. By the time Jaime was alone again on the streets of Proxima Central, the sting of humiliation burned deeper than the star's radiation ever could. 6 months in a coffin of cryosleep, years of training. and preparation, all dismissed in minutes. They saw humans as animals that slept too much, ate the dead, and cared too deeply for creatures that couldn't repay them. He paused in the flow of alien pedestrians, staring back at the spires of Vortec Industries. The structures loomed over him, gleaming like bones of some impossible beast. His reflection ghosted across their surface, small, human, unremarkable. For the first time since leaving Earth, Jaime felt the truth settle like a weight in his chest. If he was going to survive here, if he was going to prove humanity belonged among the stars, it would not be through a resume or credentials. He would need to prove it another way. And somewhere deep inside, something stirred, spark of the same stubborn compassion that once made a boy stay up all night, comforting a dying dog. The galaxy thought that was weakness. Jaime's heart was about to show them otherwise. The market sprawled before Jaime in a riot of color and noise, a far cry from the sterile silence of Vortex halls. Stalls spilled into every narrow street, draped in banners of fabric that shimmered like liquid metal. Vendors shouted in a chorus of languages, each phrase layered through his translator into jagged English fragments. Fresh tentacle fruit, rare spice from the outer clusters, living garments responsive to mood. The air reeked of charred, oil-sweet incense, and something sour he couldn't name. Jaime shoved his hands into the pockets of his exosuit underlayer, trying to swallow his frustration. He'd left Earth with a dream of starting fresh, and in one meeting his future had collapsed. 6 months in cryosleep for nothing. His gaze caught on a floating cart piled high with writhing tentacled fruit. He ducked aside, muttering a curse. A headache throbbed behind his eyes, born of disappointment and the cacophony around him. Then he saw her. The stall was simple, shaded by a canopy dyed deep violet. Behind it stood a woman or something close to one. Her skin gleamed lavender. In the sunlight, smooth and faintly luminous, like starlight refracted through crystal. Silver hair fell in intricate braids over her shoulders, catching the light as if dusted with frost. When she looked up, her amber eyes locked with his, and the din of the market seemed to blur. "You appear lost, Earthling," she said. The translator softened her melodic voice, but could not strip it of its music. Jaime hesitated, suddenly aware of the dust clinging to his boots and the sweat beating his temple. That obvious, huh? Few humans wander on markets. She gestured toward the wares before her, crystalline herbs, powders that shimmered with inner light, tiny vials filled with shifting liquid. Perhaps some Proximan saffron to lift your spirits. It produces mild euphoria in most carbon-based species. He gave a weary smile. I could use something stronger. Had an interview at Vortec. Her expression flickered recognition, mixed with pity. Director Pell? His eyebrows rose. How did you know? The exosuit and that expression. Many walk away from his office wearing it. She sorted through the herbs with slender, four-fingered hands. He is notorious for biases. Jaime leaned against the edge of her stall, drawn to her calm presence. Name's Jaime, he said, extending a hand. She accepted without hesitation. Her touch was cool, firm. Lona. Before he could reply, a sound cut through the market. High-pitched, desperate. A whimper. Both turned toward the source. A few. Stalls away, a gaunt alien with gray skin stood before a block of stained wood. In his hands gleamed a cleaver, its edge honed to a cruel shimmer. Beside him, tied to a post, were two small creatures. They resembled puppies earthly, familiar, but their fur shone bright blue, shimmering like sapphire threads beneath sunlight. Their enormous eyes glistened, galaxies spinning in their depths. They pressed against each other, trembling, tiny, bodies quaking. Jaime's breath hitched. What the hell is he doing? Lona's amber gaze darkened. preparing cerulean cubs. Their meat is prized among the Kreks. Many claim their fear tenderizes the flesh. The chef lifted the cleaver, testing the blade against the air. The cubs whimpered, a pitiful sound that sliced deeper than any weapon. Jian felt something in him snap. His body moved before his mind could catch up. "Wait," Lona called, but he was already pushing through the crowd, shoving aside astonished shoppers. The cleaver swung down in a gleaming arc. Jian thrust his arm between it and the cubs. Metal met plating with a brutal crack. The force rang up his bones, sparks bursting from his suit's forearm as the circuitry screamed. System malfunction. Power regulation compromised. His suit's eye shrieked in his ear. The chef snarled, jerking back. "Human filth," he spat, three-pupiled eyes narrowing. "You damage my blade for worthless meat?" Jian ignored him, fumbling with the restraints around the cubs. "Worth more than your damn knife," he growled. The creatures whimpered, but didn't resist as he freed them, tucking one beneath each arm. Their fur was soft, damp with fear. Their galaxy eyes locked on his as though they knew. The crowd had drawn close, a circle of hostile stares and murmurs. The chef barked in his tongue, words the translator refused to render. "Market security has been alerted," he sneered. "Interfering with commerce is a Class 2 violation. They'll have your hide stretched beside these vermin." A hand caught Jaime's shoulder. Lona's. Her grip was urgent, her amber eyes sharp. "We need to leave, now. What about bring them?" Quickly. He clutched the trembling. Cubs tighter. Sparks spat from his failing suit, heat prickling up his arm. With Lona pulling him, they shoved into a narrow alley, leaving behind the roar of the crowd and the gleam of the cleaver. For the first time since leaving Earth, Jian felt alive, not because of the job he had lost, but because of the lives he had just refused to let slip away. The alley twisted into a maze of shadows and stink, a world apart from the cacophony of the market. Rotting fruit squished under Jaime's boots, the air heavy with acrid chemicals that stung his throat. Sparks hissed from the ruined plating of his suit, each jolt sending sharp heat lancing through his forearm. The cubs whimpered, softly in his grip, their tiny hearts fluttering against his chest like trapped birds. He tightened his hold, whispering low, meaningless reassurances that seemed to calm them more than silence ever could. Lona led the way, her silver braids catching the dim light as she darted through the passages with practiced speed. "Almost. There," she murmured over her shoulder, amber eyes glowing faintly. They emerged into a courtyard, hemmed in by stacked habitation units, rust-colored containers welded together into makeshift homes. It was quieter here, save for the hum of distant generators and the murmur of unseen voices. She pressed her palm to a battered scanner beside a door. It groaned open with a reluctant hiss. Inside, she urged out. The interior surprised him. Sparse but tidy, a single room warmed by the glow of wall tapestries depicting star charts. A cooking unit hissed in one corner. A low sleeping platform was pushed against the wall. The air smelled faintly of spice and ozone. She closed the door behind them, sealing out the world with a finality Jaime hadn't realized he needed. "Put them down," she said softly. He knelt on a woven mat, setting the cubs gently onto its surface. They immediately pressed against one another, wide eyes darting between him and Lona. Their fur shimmered faintly, pulsing with soft blue light that seemed tied to their trembling breaths. Jaime barely had a moment to marvel before his suit jolted violently. He gritted his teeth as sparks erupted, searing his skin beneath the plating. "This thing's going to cook me alive." Lona crouched beside him, her touch surprisingly gentle as she traced the release clasps along his arm. "This is going to hurt. Ready?" He nodded, jaw tight. She pulled the emergency release. The neural interface snapped free with a burst of pain that lit his nerves like fire. He gasped, vision whiting out for a heartbeat as the suit fell away in pieces. Left in the thin, moisture-wicking underlayer, he felt suddenly exposed. Cool. Air kissed overheated skin. Lona's lavender fingers brushed against his shoulder as she stripped away the last sparking fragment. "Sorry," she murmured. "The feedback is always cruel." He forced a smile, though his body still trembled. Better than frying. Her eyes lingered on him, not with pity, but with something more complex curiosity, perhaps. "You risked yourself for creatures you'd never seen before." Most would have walked away. Jaime glanced at the cubs. One sniffed hesitantly at his fingers, then pressed a damp nose against his hand. The contact sent a strange warmth through him, as though the tiny being could see straight into his intent. He stroked its shimmering fur, softer than anything he'd touched since leaving Earth. Couldn't just watch them die. "Where I come from, we protect the innocent. Even if it doesn't make sense." Lona's lips curved, faint but genuine. "Humans are fascinating. So physically ordinary, yet your minds reach in unexpected directions." The second cub had edged closer, its galaxy-deep eyes reflecting the dim light. Jaime felt its trust settle over him like a weight and a comfort all at once. "What happens to them now?" he asked quietly. "They're orphans," Lona said, sadness tightening her voice. "Likely taken from northern forests. To the Creks, they are meat. But to others," she paused, then met his gaze. "To me, they are proof. Proof that compassion is not weakness." Jaime studied her, sensing layers beneath her merchant's mask. "You're not just selling spice, are you?" She laughed softly, a sound like chimes stirred by a distant breeze. "No, the market is my cover. In truth, I work with the Stellar Conservation Alliance. We rescue species from extinction and smuggling rings. It is dangerous work." "And you risked sheltering me," he said, voice low. "You risked yourself first." Her amber eyes glowed as she leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his. For a heartbeat, the silence stretched, filled only by the cub's quiet breathing. Jaime's pulse quickened. He was far from Earth, jobless, half-broken, but in that moment, surrounded by fragile life and an alien ally whose trust felt like something more. He realized this planet had already given him purpose. Not the one he had come for, but one he might be unable to walk away from. The days blurred into a rhythm. Jaime hadn't expected mornings waking to the soft whimpers of the cerulean cubs curled at his side, evenings listening to Lona's voice as she traced the star charts woven into her tapestries. They named the cubs Nova and Stellar, half in jest, half in awe of the way their eyes seemed to hold galaxies. For the first time since leaving Earth, Jaime felt something like belonging, even if it was fragile and borrowed. Yet the reprieve couldn't last. The message arrived 3 days later, projected in a cold blue hologram that flickered above his communicator. Vortec Industries application status. Updated. Approved. Report to headquarters at your earliest convenience. Jaime stared at the words, heart stumbling. He'd been rejected, humiliated, dismissed as a primitive now, suddenly approved? That doesn't make sense. He muttered dot across the room. Lona paused mid-motion. Stellar nestled in her lap. Her expression darkened. "No, it doesn't. Vortec does not change its mind, not without reason." "Maybe he started, but the thought sounded hollow even to him. "Corporations didn't reconsider out of kindness. They saw you." "At the market," she said. "Word spreads. A human who risked himself for ceruleans? That is not forgotten." Jaime rubbed a hand through his hair, restless. "So what, this is a trap? Perhaps. Or an opportunity." Lona's amber eyes gleamed, sharp now, where they had been soft before. My network has long suspected Vortec of experiments. Cruel ones. If they want you in their xenobiology division, it means the ceruleans are involved. This could be the proof we need. He looked down at Nova, who had padded across Theo, floor to nose at his boot. The cub's fur glowed faintly, as if sensing his unease. "You're asking me to walk back into the lion's den." "I am asking you," Lona said, rising to stand before him, her lavender skin faintly luminous in the dim light, "to help me protect them, and perhaps protect more than them. Your compassion is not weakness, Jaime. It is unique, dangerous to those who rule through fear." He exhaled slowly. "You think they'll let me see what they're doing?" "Not willingly," she admitted. "But my network can supply you with a discreet recorder. And access code's enough to move deeper if you are careful." She reached out her fingers curling lightly around his hand. "You came here for a job. Perhaps it will still be one. Just not the one you imagined." Jian searched her face. She was asking him to risk more than his pride now, to step into a game of espionage and corporate secrets. Yet beneath the tension was trust he had earned in a single reckless act when he'd thrown his arm in front of a cleaver. "All right," he said at last. "I'll go. But if I do this, I want your word. If anything happens to me, you get Nova and Stellar to safety." Her expression softened, though her grip on his hand tightened. "I swear it. But nothing will happen to you. I won't allow it." The cubs stirred, as if sensing the weight of the moment, their glowing fur pulsing faintly in unison. Jiang felt the knot in his chest tighten, half fear, half resolve. He'd come to Proxima B, chasing a future built on circuits and alloys. But it seemed his true test lay in something far less tangible, proving that compassion had a place among. The stars dot the next morning. He donned a hastily purchased replacement exosuit. It was cheaper, clunkier, lacking the neural finesse of his ruined one, but it would pass inspection. At his side, he carried a small container inside. Nova slept under the influence of a harmless sedative Lona had prepared. Insurance, she called it. Proof. When he stepped out into the morning sun, the spires of Vortec once again gleamed against the orange sky. But this time, as he approached, he carried more than a resume. He carried the weight of trust, the hope of two frightened creatures, and the bond of a woman whose amber eyes had already begun to change the way he saw himself. This time, Shyam. Hart wasn't coming to beg for acceptance. He was coming to find the truth. The elevator hummed as it carried Jaime higher into Vortec's tower, the sterile light reflecting off polished walls that seemed to pulse faintly, as though alive. The reptilian receptionist's words echoed in his ears. "Director Pell is expecting you. Level 42, Xenobiology." He adjusted the strap of the container at his side, careful not to disturb Nova's sedated body inside. His palms were damp, though the replacement exosuit's cooling system kept his skin cool. Lona's voice whispered through the tiny earpiece, hidden beneath his hair. "Remember cover story first. Eager, compliant, curious, nothing more." The elevator doors slid open to reveal Director Pell, as severe as Jaime remembered. His three eyes blinked in sequence, lingering a fraction. Longer on the container. "Mr. Hart, unexpected, yet timely. Follow me." They wound through narrow corridors layered with security, scanners that hummed over his DNA, guards whose eyes tracked his every movement, chambers filled with sterile white light. Jaime's engineering mind noted each feature automatically. Redundancies, the energy flows, the backup generators humming faintly behind the walls. Not design meant to protect knowledge, but to imprison it. At last they entered a laboratory. The air smelled of antiseptic and ozone, thick with an undercurrent of something organic, something wrong. Transparent containment tanks lined the walls. Within, ceruleans lay on cold platforms, Their once vibrant blue fur dulled to lifeless gray. Their galaxy-deep eyes barely flickered as Jaime approached, a quiet whimper escaping one throat. What happened to them? Jaime asked before he could stop himself. A spindly alien with 6 arms scuttled forward, compound eyes reflecting Jaime's face back in a dozen distorted fragments. Side effects? He chirped, voice buzzing. Unavoidable in early testing. Doctor. Kren, Pell said. Our new consultant. Kren's mandibles clicked in excitement. Excellent, excellent. And with a specimen. His many hands twitched toward the container. Perfect timing. Jaime forced himself to remain still, to keep his voice flat. Testing for what? Radiation transduction. Kren hissed, pulling up a display. Schematics bloomed in the air. Ships, engines, waves of energy transformed into luminous models of ceruleans glowing with blue fire. Ceruleans do not merely sense emotions. They metabolize radiation, specifically the frequencies emitted by faster-than-light drives. A biological processor. One creature replaces 20 tons of shielding. Jaime's stomach turned. You're using them as living ship parts. Processors, Pell corrected smoothly. Efficient, revolutionary, and more. Kren's compound eyes glittered. They convert radiation to emotional energy. Directed correctly, that energy destabilizes. Enemy minds. Confusion, terror, despair. Entire battalions disarmed without a shot fired. Project Empath. Jaime's throat felt dry. Weaponized empathy, he said. Pel tilted his head. You grasp quickly. Yes, dual application, safer travel, and psychological dominance. Jaime looked at the ceruleans again, their weak bodies, twitching against restraint. This is what they wanted me for, he thought. Not his engineering, not his resume, his humanity. Most species cannot sustain this processing. Kren continued, voice high with glee. Their empathic centers collapse. They die. He leaned close, mandibles clicking. But humans show anomalies. Attachment to the non-sentient. Risking injury for strangers. Irrational, inefficient, perfect. Your brain may stabilize. Them. Before Jaime could reply, Pell gestured to the container. Place the specimen on the table. He set Nova down, heart pounding. The cub stirred faintly, the sedative wearing thin. Tiny paws pressed against the transparent wall. Those. Galaxy eyes finding Jaime's face. Attach the sensors, Kren chirped. Measure resonance. Cold metal pads pressed against Jaime's temples. Blue light washed across his vision as the scanner engaged, humming deeper, hungrier. He forced his breathing calm. Play along. Gather proof. Focus on the specimen. Pell instructed. Let us observe your emotional response. Jaime turned his head. Nova's eyes met his. A flood of warmth rushed through him, protectiveness, fierce and primal. The cub trusted him utterly. He felt it like a pulse in his chest. The monitors screamed with color. Patterns exploded outward, blooming in fractals of light. Extraordinary, Kren whispered. Orders of magnitude beyond projections. Then, Nova began to glow. A faint sapphire shimmer at first, then brighter, pulsing in rhythm with Jaime's heartbeat. In the tanks, the sickly adults stirred. Their dulled fur shimmered, patches of vibrant blue re-emerging. Alarms wailed. Emotional containment breach in sectors 3 through 7. Through the windows, staff stumbled into the halls laughing. Weeping, collapsing. A guard dropped his weapon and began twirling in a delirious dance. Another curled into a sobbing heap. Shut it down. Pell barked, his composure cracking, all 3 eyes flickering wildly. Kren's 6 arms flew over. The controls, but his movements faltered, his mandibles chittering in manic laughter. Too much joy. Cannot. The tide of emotions slammed into Jaime, overwhelming. Fear, sorrow, relief, pain, 1,000 voices layered atop his own. He staggered, choking on sensations that weren't his, but at the center of it, all was Nova, glowing brighter, his tiny form radiating trust like a beacon. Jaime clung to that thread, grounding himself. With a growl, he ripped the neural sensors free. Pain lanced through his skull, but the flood began to recede. Slowly, the adults settled, though their fur still shimmered faintly, healthier than before. Nova curled into a ball, exhausted. Jaime's breaths came ragged. What just happened? Unexpected, Pell admitted, his voice trembling. Your resonance amplified theirs, beyond control? Before Jaime could respond, a new voice echoed from the doorway. Deep, commanding, predatory, exactly as I suspected. A tall figure strode in, crimson skin ridged with bone, uniform heavy with military insignia. His gaze locked on Jaime like a hawk sighting prey. Mr. Hart, General Moore said, a slow smile cutting across his face. You may be the key we've been waiting for. General Moore's boots struck the lab floor with the precision of a war. Drum, each step echoing through Jaime's skull. His crimson skin gleamed under the sterile lights, the bony ridges crowning his brow, casting sharp shadows across eyes that gleamed with calculation. Soldiers trailed behind him heavily armed. Alert, but it was his presence that sucked the air from the room. Even Director Pell shrank slightly, lowering his middle eye in a subtle gesture of deference. So it's true, Moore said, circling Jaime as though assessing a weapon. Humans resonate not only with each other, but with species entirely unrelated. To them, inefficient, irrational, and dangerously unpredictable. Jaime forced himself to hold steady. You're afraid of us, he said. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. Afraid? Moore's smile was jagged. I respect potential threats. And your species is precisely that. You form alliances where logic dictates indifference. You protect vermin at the cost of your own safety. You destabilize hierarchies older than your civilization. That cannot be allowed to spread unchecked. Jaime's gut twisted. So you're planning to wipe us out? Not wipe out, Moore said smoothly. Repurpose. Your technology and labor will be preserved. Your emotional centers neutralized. Imagine an entire species of humans stripped of their primitive compassion, functioning with cold efficiency. Order restored. That is the true purpose of Project Empath. A cold weight settled in Jaime's stomach. He thought of Nova and Stellar, of Lona's amber eyes glowing softly in the dark, of her laugh like chimes. He thought of Earth's colonies fragile, untested, hopeful, neutralized, reduced to husks. Pell's middle eye shifted uneasily. General, the protocols were never meant for mass application. Silence. Moore snapped, his soldiers lifting their weapons in reflex. You will deliver results, or you will be replaced. He turned back to Jaime. As for you, human, your mind is the catalyst we need. You will complete the process, whether you consent or not. Jaime clenched his fists, but his voice remained calm. And if my mind breaks in the process, then it will break gloriously, Moore said, already turning toward the door. Prepare him. As the general strode out, Jaime's thoughts raced. The cub's glow, the adults stirring, the flood of emotions. They hadn't just destabilized the lab. They'd connected. It had felt like threads binding him to the ceruleans, threads that could be woven into something stronger. He glanced at Pell, who lingered at the edge of the room, his mottled green skin paler than before. You don't like this, Jaime said. Under his breath, Pell's outer eyes flicked toward the guards, then back to Jaime. His voice was low, almost a whisper. Moore's plan goes beyond containment. If he succeeds, Your species will never recover. But there may be another way. Later, in a shadowed maintenance chamber hidden from prying eyes, Lona appeared, stellar glowing faintly in her arms. She had infiltrated the facility with Pell's covert help. The sight of her nearly undid Jaime, but there was no time for embraces. Her gaze was fierce, steady. Pell told me of the neural bridge. Jaime frowned. The what? Pell emerged from the shadows, his voice clipped. A theoretical network. By synchronizing multiple ceruleans through a human empathic catalyst, their combined surge could corrupt all weaponized research permanently. Every mirror, every encrypted backup destroyed in an instant. Lona's hand tightened around his. You would be that catalyst, Jaime, only you. The cub in her arms chirped softly, as if understanding. Jaime's throat constricted. And the risk? Pell hesitated. Severe. Neural strain could collapse your emotional centers entirely. Perhaps fatally? Silence pressed down broken, only by Stellar's faint whimper. Jaime looked from Pell to Lona. She held his gaze, amber eyes shimmering. There was fear there, yes, but also something else trust, love. He reached out, brushing his knuckles against her lavender cheek. If it saves Earth, saves them? His eyes flicked to Nova's container, where the cub pressed tiny paws. Against the glass. Then it's worth it. Don't say that, Lona whispered, voice breaking. Don't reduce yourself to a sacrifice. You're more than that. To me. He bent his forehead to hers, the intimate gesture of her people. Then trust me. I'll come back. Pell activated the apparatus, a ring of conduits surrounding a central platform. The adult ceruleans were freed from their tanks, forming a circle with Nova and Stellar pressed against Jaime's legs. Their fur shimmered, glowing brighter as they sensed his intent. Sensors clamped to his temples, cold as ice. The bridge will form through you, Pell explained, fingers flying over controls. Your patterns will synchronize them. The surge must be focused outward into the network. Once released, it will erase every trace of Moore's weapon. Jaime took Lona's hands one last time. Her touch was steady, despite the tremor in her breath. Come back to me, she whispered. We still have more alien puppies to save. The machinery hummed, energy coiling in the air like a gathering storm. Jaime closed his eyes, reaching for the cubs, for the warmth of their trust, for the warmth, bond he had never expected to find among the stars. The threads tightened. Light swelled, and then the surge began. Light consumed him. It wasn't the cold light of Vortex Laboratories, or the sterile glow of a starship corridor. It was a flood, a storm of color and sensation that roared through every fiber of Jaime's being. He felt himself dissolve, stretched across. 1,000 threads of connection. Each cerulean's mind touched his, a symphony of fear, longing, and fragile hope weaving into a chorus that spanned far beyond the lab. He glimpsed forests under alien moons, packs of cubs chirping to the stars, generations carrying memories through shimmering fur. It was too much, too vast, too beautiful. Then came the pain. White-hot needles lanced through his skull as the network's weight pressed down. His individuality threatened to shatter, his thoughts drowned beneath the collective tide. Somewhere far away, Pell shouted readings, and Lona's voice broke through the maelstrom, fierce and desperate. Come back, Jaime. Anchor yourself to me. He clung to her voice, to the memory of her forehead pressed to his, to the cub's tiny bodies trembling against his legs. He pushed one final surge, outward, not of fear, not of despair, but of pure compassion. A wave of humanity's stubborn refusal to abandon the innocent. The energy detonated through the network, shattering every encrypted vault, corrupting every line of code tied to Project Empath. And then everything went dark. When awareness returned, Jaime lay in a room bathed in golden sunlight. Large windows framed purple mountains, veined with rivers of silver light. Sheets rustled beneath him, too soft, too comfortable for anything but sanctuary. He lifted a hand, sluggish, heavy, and found it trembling. Something was wrong. He felt. Nothing. You're awake. Lona's voice pulled him back. She knelt beside the bed, her silver braids loose, her amber eyes full of concern. She reached for his hand, and though he registered the pressure of her touch, there was no warmth in it, no spark of feeling. I don't, his voice rasped. I don't feel anything. Pain crossed her face. The neural strain. Pell warned this might happen. Your emotional centers burned out. Jaim blinked slowly. Did it work? Her lips trembled, then steadied. More than we hoped. The surge didn't just erase Moore's research. It created a permanent empathic network among the ceruleans. They're linked now, galaxy-wide, protected. And the Galactic Council has launched an investigation into Moore's plans. Your colonies are safe. Good, Jaime said flatly, the word mechanical. Lona gripped his hand tighter, tears pooling in her eyes. Pell believes it may be temporary. The human brain is. Adaptable. With time, with help, you might recover. And if I don't? Her voice hardened. Then I'll feel enough for both of us. A sound stirred at the foot of the bed. Nova. And Stellar padded forward, their fur glowing faintly. They chirped softly, climbing onto him as though nothing had changed. Stellar pressed his nose into Jaime's palm, and Nova curled against his chest. For the first time since waking, Jaime felt something faint, fragile, like the first flicker of a spark in ashes. A whisper of warmth. His breath caught. I feel something. Lona's face broke into a smile, relief shining through her tears. They're helping you rebuild. The weeks that followed were slow, grueling. Some days, Jaime felt nothing but the weight of emptiness. On others, a flicker of contentment, a thread of irritation, a spark of gratitude. Each time, the cubs glowed brighter, as though feeding his broken pathways with their own empathic light. And each time, Lona was there patient, unwavering, pressing his hand to her cheek, reminding him that love was not something easily erased. 6 months later, Jaime stood on the balcony of the sanctuary he now shared with Lona. Below, dozens of rescued ceruleans played in protected habitats, their fur shimmering like a living constellation. Nova and Stellar, grown strong, bounded across the grass before leaping up to nuzzle his legs. The Earth delegation arrives tomorrow, Lona said softly, stepping to his side. Are you nervous to see your kind again? Jaime considered, sifting through the still fragile landscape of his emotions. A little, he admitted. Then his lips curved into something genuine, mostly proud. They're passing laws to protect cross-species bonds. That wouldn't have happened without what we did. She leaned against him, lavender skin glowing faintly in the afternoon sun. Without what you did, you showed them that compassion is humanity's gift to the stars. He turned, studying her face, every line etched into his memory. His emotions were not whole, perhaps never would be, but one truth burned clear, undeniable. I love you, he said simply. Her amber eyes glowed, luminous with joy. And I've loved you since the moment you put your hand between a cleaver and 2 frightened alien puppies. They kissed, a promise sealed beneath the light of a foreign sun. The cubs chirped beside them, their galaxy-deep eyes reflecting the scene. Jaime smiled into the embrace, thinking how absurd it all was, that saving 2 trembling creatures in a marketplace had grown into this. A purpose, a family, a future. Sometimes the smallest act of compassion could change the course of the galaxy. And Jaime's heart had proven it.